How do you get refreshed, renewed? It's summertime in Canada, and this is a time that most of us take to take some vacation. We unplug from work for a little bit, and we try to regenerate and recharge that proverbial battery. It's important. We want to have fresh mind and fresh approach. When we go back, we want to give our best. That's what we do. How do you refresh spiritually? What do you do to recharge those spiritual batteries when they run low? Well, the Bible gives us some indication of how that can happen. Isaiah 40:31 says that those who wait in the Lord will be renewed in strength. You know, the reality is that that word wait has been translated many ways. Some translations will say those who wait, others will say those who hope, others will say those who trust in the Lord will be renewed in strength. The word trust, or wait, or hope is a very important one in that context because it actually means to have an intimate relationship, in this case with the Lord. Better yet, it is to have a long, intimate relationship with the Lord. And that's what we need. If we are to be refreshed and renewed during this summertime, one of the things that we need to do is to find a ways to go deeper in our relationship with God. To live intimately with Him is important. That word actually means, if we expand that word, it means to live for a long time. To have a long, intimate relationship with someone. In this case, God. Why is that important? It is important simply because when you live with someone for a long time in an intimate relationship, there's some things about you that begin to change. The first one is that you begin to recognize the call or the voice of the person you are intimate with. When my wife calls me on the phone, after 23 years of marriage, when she calls me on the phone, I know her voice very intimately. I know the intonation that she uses to call my name. I understand when she's angry at me or when she's loving towards me because I know her voice. When we are intimate with God, one of the ways that we get renewed is that we begin to recognize God speaking. In those little things, in the voice of others, in the messages that we hear, in the books that we read, we begin to see God speaking to us. We begin to see His love pour out to us. We begin to see His correction coming to us. Secondly, when we live in intimacy with someone for a long period of time, we are changed more into their likeness. There are some things I like today that I really did not like when I first got married. But after many years of living with my wife, one of the things is I begin to pick up some of her habits, some of her likes, some of the things that she appreciates now I have come to appreciate. I'm a little bit more like her. And I hope that she's a little bit more like me after being together for so long. And this is what happens to us when we live in intimacy with God, is that we begin to take on His likeness. We begin, what we like, what we desire, begins to be transformed for what He desires. The Bible tells us that if we delight ourselves in the Lord, He will give us the desires of our heart. And many of us tend to think that the desires of our heart is just these things that we want to have. But the reality is that the second part of this, the verse, is not disconnected from the first. We must live in intimacy with God, delight ourselves with Him, because then our heart's desire begin to change for what He desires. And when that happens, then those desires begin to come true. So my challenge for all of us today is that when we unplug and we disconnect from the world, and when we sit around recharging our batteries, let's also get renewed spiritually. Let's choose to have an intimate, long relationship with God, to the point where we can recognize his voice. Just like Jesus said, my sheep, they know my voice. And we begin to notice that we're being transformed into his likeness. I'm Elton DaSilva, and I'm hoping that you will have a great summer.